So yeah, that's kind of the idea. You want it to be such a unique identifier that when they see the logo, they think of the experiences they've had with you.
Okay. So, welcome to the Make Me Over Eb podcast. I'm your host, Ebony Looney. And in today's episode, I'm talking with Danielle Easler, the owner of Fedora and Co. She's a freelance graphic designer based in Mooresville, North Carolina. She loves creating original logos and designs to help her clients' messaging have a distinctive and polished appeal. Now, she says getting to know her clients well and really listening is really important to her. And understanding what helps the company tick helps her really capture the essence visually of their brand. And so in today's episode, we're going to talk to her about the importance of the look and feel of a company, whether the person is just starting out or they're a small to mid-sized business, and how that look, which we call the brand identity, helps you really attract the clients that you want. So welcome to the show, Danielle.
Thank you, Ebony. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Oh, thank you for being here. Now, interestingly enough, we've known each other for quite some time. I would say since I was 9 and you were
I think I was
11.
12.
You were
Yeah.
12.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've known each other for quite some time. And it's interesting as I was thinking of when I we reconnected through LinkedIn, because we haven't talked in a while, is that we're both in some sort of marketing and graphics now. Did you think we'd be doing this when we were kids?
No, I did not. I did not. Yeah.
I know it's funny. I would have never thought. Of course, back then, because we're in our 40s now, um, and late 40s, you know, marketing as it is today was totally different. And I think, thinking back of like what they told us in school, they kind of pushed me toward like teaching, being a doctor, being an architect, and I was like, I don't want to do that. And then I want to go to art school. It's like, how are you gonna
Yeah,
build a business in art? And it's like, now we have graphic designers.
exactly. And there wasn't as much, I mean, there was hardly any online presence back then when we were young and just starting out in our careers. So, yeah, it was a totally different world.
It was totally different. I got introduced to the internet. It's funny to say this was probably in my 20s. I worked with the company. This is when the internet started being bigger, right? I worked with the company who was a startup and they helped furniture companies with their interior design libraries. And so they built this online database. And
Hmm.
at the time, it was like really cool because it was on the internet.
The internet.
The
Ooh.
internet, right? And it's like, what's that? And now, you tell your grandmother, I work on the internet. It's like, what? What is that? What is that? But the internet has become such a crucial role in how we actually conduct business. I mean, for the simple
Mhm.
fact that we are recording a conversation through the internet, digital. And so how companies present themselves now. So when we were younger, you had a flyer, you had a brochure. So graphics was always very important. So we'll talk about that and how a company can get the importance of that. So, but let's kind of go back a little bit before we get into that part. How
Mhm.
did you get into graphic design? Like, what made you say, I think I kind of want to do this?
So I have always loved just making things, anything, art, craft projects, whatever, all of my life. And so before the pandemic, I had been making jewelry for about 10 years. I was learning metalsmithing. It was just so interesting to me to design a piece of jewelry and then make it come to life with, fire and tools and things like that. But as we went into the pandemic, this was something that it's a very old-fashioned way of doing things.
Hmm.
So you have to scale up in some way. A lot of people outsource making the jewelry, or they are able to have a workshop where they can cast jewelry. And I just I didn't want to scale up in that way. It wasn't as interesting to me. And I realized that I needed to do something that was more viable since some of the galleries that were selling my work were closing. So I thought about what can I do that can scratch that creative itch, but is something that is modern that people need, that they, that I can actually make a living at. And so I took graphic design courses online for 2 years during the pandemic. And so about a year ago was when I went public and I started doing designs mostly for family and friends to start with. And then I started networking and building the business that way. And so it's grown and I'm really enjoying it.
Well, that's good. So it shows that, you know, being a creative, there's okay a couple of things. It's okay to like pivot
Mhm.
if that job no longer serves you. But at the same time, you're like, I want to do something that I enjoy, that people actually need.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's okay. It's good for people to hear this. Most clients I've talked to, their original career that they started out in, whether they went to school for it or not, give it about 10 to 15 years, they're like, I think I want to do something else. So I wonder if that's just human nature. You want a slight change.
Mhm.
Unlike our parents who typically worked in the same job all their life a lot of times, but we're of a different generation where people switch, and that's become normal. So what's behind the name Fedora?
So that's my middle name. I don't know if you remember that from when we were young,
I
but
d- did not know that.
so that's my
I
middle name. I
did
kind of
not
was
know
like,
that.
I'm gonna lean into it.
I Okay. I got to take a sip on that because I didn't know that. I love it. I didn't know that. Wow. The things I'm finding out on the podcast, Fedora. Okay, so we went with that.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so you took a graphic design class, what,
Mhm.
about 2 years ago? Was it a year and a half or two?
So it was about 2 years during the pandemic. So it was like courses in design theory and color theory, and then um, courses in the different software that you use. I use the Adobe suite of tools, and so I took
Mm-hmm.
courses in that software, and then also kind of the principles of logo design and branding. So kind of just several different courses in a row that kind of give you more of an idea of what you need to
Mm-hmm.
do in order to help people with their logos and so forth.
So let me ask you this. Did you
Mhm.
immediately know from the jewelry you wanted to do logo specific graphic design, or was it after you took the graphic design class, you were like, I think I want to do more logos?
It was after I took the class, because there are other avenues you can go into. You can go into more like advertising layout or editorial spreads, things like that, or even more like website content. But I just really love the kind of the sparks that it gives you to think of a logo that really encompasses a person's brand, that tells people what they do and what their values are. It's such a challenge and it's really interesting. And you get to find out like what makes this person tick? Why did they get into the business that they're in? What do they love about it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. So because, you know, I've been hearing the term in the past since the pandemic, since we're talking about that, of the idea of specialization in your career. The more you specialize, the more you get known for that particular thing, which helps you build a brand, a personal brand, right?
Mhm.
And I've been leaning more into specialization in the past since the pandemic, so maybe past 4 3 4 years. And I was kind of like fighting it, like, oh no, I do websites. But what happens is I would get a lot of requests for, well, can you do this site? And I was like, I don't know how to do that site. And so the idea of specializing, okay, well, maybe I'm only going to do sites for service providers with a booking
Mhm.
calendar and a store for the beauty industry, the wellness industry. So now it's like, and I'm actually seeing how easy and simple it is helping me to really focus in my business. So what I'm hearing is that even you are a graphic designer, even specializing in the brand identity is good. So then you know how to market yourself, right? And
Mhm.
so usually the people who listen to the podcast, they always say, "Well, I do hair." Well, what kind of hair?
That's
Short
a good
hair,
point. Yeah.
right? Short hair, curly hair, long hair. I don't want to say black, white hair because, curly, what kind of textures? Are you only doing blonde? So the idea of specializing helps. So by the time the person comes to you, is that something you ask them? Like, well, what do you specialize in? Is that important
Yeah,
to designing a logo?
absolutely. Yeah. What do you specialize in? Who your target demographic is also makes a big difference in the type of logo, the colors that you use. You're going to use different colors to appeal to a younger market than an older one, or to an edgier market rather than
Hmm.
a more classic market, you know? So yeah, everything that you can find out about the company and what they're trying to get across,
Okay.
really, every bit helps. Yeah.
Okay. So if someone comes to you and they're like, well, I don't know my market,
Mhm.
what do you tell them?
So if they don't know their market, we would have to have a longer conversation, because I feel like you probably instinctively know a lot about who you're trying to reach, even if you don't feel like you can vocalize it right now.
Okay.
You know, I would yeah, I would just have a much longer conversation with them to try to draw it out.
So I feel too, it sounds like, and I've talked to other creatives beyond us as web designers, web developers, and graphic designers, logo designers, we start adding brand strategy.
Mhm.
Even if it's a 15-20 minute conversation, we got to come up with a strategy. Because how do you
Mhm.
do a logo for everybody? Right?
Yeah,
Like,
you
what is this?
can.
Yeah, what is this about? 'Cause you're trying to reach somebody. And so that's good to know. So let's talk about the logo,
Okay.
right? Is You wanted to tell us what is a logo? Describe as a
Okay.
graphic designer, what's a logo to you?
Okay. The one sentence while we're going up one floor in an elevator, I would tell you it's a unique mark that identifies your business.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's not your entire branding, but it is a big part of your branding, you know. It's going to be made up of text and or images. And what you ideally want with the logo is that you want people to look at it and think of all the experiences they've had with your brand.
Okay.
So if you think of logos that you're familiar with, like from larger companies, like if you see like a green and white mermaid logo,
Oh,
you're going to
Starbucks.
think of, yeah, you're going to think of every single experience you've had with them. I personally do like
Expensive.
Starbucks. Yeah, you're going to think, yeah, a little more pricey, but you know what you're going to get, you know what the flavors are before you
Hmm.
get there. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the idea. You want it to be such a unique identifier that when they see the logo, they think of the experiences they've had with you.
Okay. So what's a bad logo? And
Bad
what's a
logo,
good
that's a good
logo?
one. Okay, so I would say one thing that makes a bad logo is it doesn't communicate the actual vibe of your business. Maybe sometimes people they might use clip art, or they might use something that, let's say their business is, well, if we're sticking with coffee, let's say their business is coffee and they want to appeal to business people, but the logo is maybe a flower that's very curly. It doesn't communicate the vibe of the business at all. There's just something off about it. It's not going to attract the people that they want to attract. Another thing would be if it's not functional. So if you can't see it from a distance, um, if you can't read it, you know, have you ever had that happen? Like you look at a
Yeah, I've had that
business
happen. I've had that
sign.
happen. People,
Yeah.
I'll put together a website. I'm the website person, and I'll say, "Oh, send me your logo and the different files, whatever." And then it's like a whole sentence at the bottom, and I'm like, "That's not a logo." And they're like, "Yes, it is. I
Hmm.
had somebody design it." I don't want to sound
Yeah.
elitist, but I'm like, that is not a logo. I'm sorry.
Hmm.
And then when I explain to them, like when you think of the Starbucks, that it's they're like, oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
But we'll work with, and I say, well, how about this? We'll work with it for now. And then later you will still design the website, but later you can get your logo redesigned.
That's
which
interesting to hear about it from the other side. Mhm.
yeah, because which we'll talk about that too. Sometimes I'll have clients come to me with their logo package, right? Depending on the size of the business. I worked with a client, they were a developer, and they had the whole brand identity suite, and I loved
Mhm.
it because I can pick the colors and everything, and they had the icon, they had the they had different versions of their logo. And I loved working with that because then I can just really build a site around it. And then some people, not what not, they had like the little words at the bottom, or they had something they did in clip art, and they didn't even have a transparent PNG file, or they
Mhm.
did something themselves. And I was like, well, okay, well, let's just baby steps, because sometimes it's hard to do everything. Um, so do you normally, you said you work with startups, right?
Mhm.
If they're Do they normally have websites that, and you're on your side of the end, or
So we can do it either way. If they already have a website, a lot of times startups also are kind of bootstrapping everything. So they do have a technological grasp of things. So if you send them the logo
Mhm.
and say, use this on your website, they can put it on their website
Okay.
themselves, or they'll have their web designer do it. But if you are going to send it to a web designer, such as yourself, I do the branding kit that has everything. There's the guidelines. There's also the files arranged very in an organized way so that you know which ones are for print and you know which ones are for the web. And um, that way they don't have to know. They can just send the files that the designer requests.
Okay. Okay. So, I probably gonna, it's probably a moot point at this point, but it's like, should a business do their brand identity before doing their website? What's your opinion?
Oh, that's a good question. It depends because if you have been in business long enough to know what your marketing position is going to be, to know a little bit about your business, then you're more in a position to explain to a designer what you want. I would say probably get a smaller branding kit. There are lots of graphic designers who will offer a mini kit for those who are just starting out, who maybe they don't have the money to splurge on every single asset that they're going to need in the future, but they need something to put online, to put on social media. So you will often get with that a logo. Maybe you'll get suggestions for colors and fonts to use. And it's a lot, and maybe a business card design, or there's probably a couple other assets that they'll add with that. But that way you can go ahead and get started without a huge investment up front. And then if you do need to switch gears, if you find that your brand strategy wasn't working, it's not such a huge investment to redo everything.
Okay. Now, I don't think I've heard of a mini branding kit. So there's
Mhm.
levels to this, huh?
There's levels, yeah. So like with me, I offer like a logo package for
Mm-hmm.
people who are newer in their journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so that does include the logo in a few different variations so that you can use it on different media. Because sometimes, like as you were saying, you might need a horizontal version or a square version, a
Mm-hmm.
circle, like, for different media that you're using the logo on. And that will include a color palette and the fonts. So
Okay.
it doesn't include every single asset like signage and everything that you'll need if you expand.
Oh, okay. And then
And
the
then the
mini kit.
next the next version up, yeah, the next version up would include stationery and business cards and all of the other assets to fill out everything once you're growing.
Okay. So when you say with the stationery, are you getting that printed for them, or you're just saying, hey, this is the file you need for the stationery to send to the stationery people?
Yeah, I would send the designs to them and then they would source the printer and everything. Although I do have some recommendations, especially if they're local. I know some people that are really good.
But that's actually good to know because, so well, before I ask the next question, what is the next level after mini kit?
So I just actually put together some packages. So The logo package, you're going to get a consultation. So we would meet in person or by video conference, and we would do, as we talked about before, we'd talk about your company strategy, your goals, your target audience, what your company values, and all of that in order to get just a comprehensive view of what you're trying to accomplish, you know? And so
Yeah.
then you would get your logo. It includes revisions, so that we can refine things to get down to
Mm-hmm.
exactly what the person wants. And that would come in black and white and color and all of your different file formats for print and web use. And then you'll get a
Okay.
brand guidelines sheet to tell you how to use those files.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, often when you're starting out, you are doing things yourself. And so that would help you to use the different files and know what they need to do. But then the second one that I offer is the brand identity package.
Mm-hmm.
So that includes everything with the logo package, but then you also get other assets as you need them. So the business card, the letterhead or email signature, social media templates, a brand pattern, often other assets as well, like if you need a sign for a physical business or for your car, things like that.
And that, I think the thing that I thought was interesting that you had the social media templates. Social media has become such an important part of like the look and feel of a brand. And I know,
Mhm.
you can look at my social media. At times, I might be all over the place with color because I'm trying to do something different. Um, but it's now, I would have never thought of that as part of a brand identity, but it is important, especially depending on your type of business, because um, it's how they see you. It's their like identifying your style. So they know, oh, this is so and so. Um,
Yeah, like I'm thinking like if somebody met you and then the next time they saw you, your hair was red and you were wearing a trench coat, and then the next time they saw you, your hair was green and you had big glasses on, and like it's almost like they never get a chance to know who you really are. And so it's kind of the same thing with your company. You want them to look at whatever you're putting out to them, your messaging, and
yeah.
say, "Oh, I know that company. I really like that company." You don't want them to say, "Who is that?"
Well, I'm laughing because I changed my hair a lot.
I do too.
Yeah. And so if they're looking at this as a video and they go and look through my other videos, like sometimes I have like several different wigs, but
Uh-huh.
that could be part of the brand strategy that you always change
Yes.
your hair. But I do have
Mhm.
the same glasses on.
Well, there you go. Like the through line is the glasses.
The
Yes.
through line. So we have a through line through. Does that make sense? But that's true. Okay. I was like, oh, she's just describing me. I haven't done green hair. I haven't done green hair. But that's good to know though, that there's different levels. So, I work with wellness, what health, wellness, and beauty, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of times you'll see stuff and you're like, oh my goodness, this branding uh visually is all over the place. And so um do you so you just mentioned having something as an identifying mark, right? Your through line, the thing that makes you look the same. Do you see a difference between a cheap looking brand and an expensive looking brand? And what does that look like? What is the thing that you see that makes it look cheap and that says, "Oh
Mm.
wow, this is kind of like expensive or
Ooh,
luxury."
this is an interesting one. I like this. So, okay. I think that we all instinctively know certain things about this. Like if you look at a brand and everything is crowded, there are lots of different colors with lots of contrast. You're going to think it's either a children's brand or you're going to think it's a discount brand.
Okay.
That's that's just the look that it gives. There's so much contrast, there's so much going on. You're going to think that you're going to get a really good deal. Whereas if you think of a
Okay.
super expensive brand, I like think of like a jewelry ad that you see when you're driving down the road. There's so much white space. They're going to use an elegant font. There's not going to be a ton of things crowded in. You're going to be able to focus just on the brand and what they're selling. So
Okay.
you can kind of kind of put that into the logo mix too. If you are creating a logo for a brand that's more expensive, you're going to want to use more of an elegant font. You're going to use less contrast in the colors, more white space.
More white space. So, okay, so let's look at some examples. When you were saying colorful,
Yeah.
you think I'm going to get a deal.
Yes.
Now, unless your company is the deal type, and you're like, well, no, you're not getting a deal.
Exactly.
You're saying like maybe they should use less color, less
Yeah, they might
crowded
want to use,
space.
yeah, less contrast too.
Oh, less contrast.
If you want to make yourself look expensive.
So when you say less contrast,
Let's see. I'm trying to think of
now
some,
we could pull up a visual for those when we have the video piece, but
right.
for the audio piece, like what would be um okay, so in my head I'm thinking Walmart, let's use Walmart. Walmart is a store brand.
Okay.
Walmart is bright blue, yellow, and then of
hmm
course they used to have that little smile thing, I think. But you're
hmm
right, their branding is very colorful. They're a
hmm
supermarket store. Even in their advertising, everything is that. You're like, oh my goodness. And then Canva, from the graphic design piece of it, Canva, which I have their song in my head, design, but their site is colorful. It's so
hmm
colorful, but it is an inexpensive graphic design tool for everyone. That's what I hear. But it's like it's we want to be colorful and we want to be accessible to everyone. And
hmm
you do get a good deal.
Yeah. hmm
But then
Or
Adobe,
IKEA. I was thinking IKEA as well.
okay, yeah.
Like the
Okay, I'm
blue
pulling
and
up
the
IKEA.
yellow, cheerful, bold. We know that we're
Bold.
going to get we have to put it together ourselves, but we're going to get a better deal.
Okay. Now Adobe. Now Adobe,
hmm
since you use Adobe, Adobe is like the OG of the graphic design tools, right?
Yeah.
Um, it was always I just know when the old packages you would pay a lot, a couple of $1,000 just to get a license. Now they're kind of because they're competing with Canva, they have different levels. But how would you describe their brand as it is today?
So I would say because they are a creative brand, they are much more colorful than other sort of more exclusive brands would be. So they do use a lot of color in their
Okay.
branding.
Okay. But you never think Adobe and you think cheap because
You don't.
you don't think cheap.
No. So a lot of it depends on your audience as well, because you're trying to entice creatives and show these are the amazing things that you can do with our products.
Okay.
So
So let's break this down though with and we say cheap. Let's just define cheap. There's depending on if you want your brand to if you're offering a discount bargain and that is your brand strategy. Well, I want to
mhm,
make things accessible, affordable. Um that's one thing. Then there's cheap that it doesn't look like quality because there's nothing wrong with being
right.
accessible, but
hmm
you can still be well designed, accessible with beautiful colors like Canva. And then you have the
hmm
cheap, like not really put together. It looks not
mm
like quality.
Right. So not a strategy. It just ends up looking that way.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And you're
hmm
saying it's instinctively, we kind of know when something looks cheap. We're like, that
hmm
look, who did this? Did your cousin
Yeah.
do this? Yeah. That's what people think. Did your
Yeah.
cousin, brother, mother, cousin, father, who designed
hmm
this? If that
I
person
think one
asked
of
you
the,
for a couple of $1,000, you'd be like, no, because y'all look brand new.
yeah. So one of the things I would say is that the branding isn't consistent. So let's say you have a pictorial logo, there's some kind of symbol that they've used. Maybe, I don't know, maybe since you work with hairdressers, maybe it's a woman's face or something.
Okay.
And then they have the word mark at the bottom. So hairstyling by Anne or whatever their word mark is,
Yeah.
they're not going to look consistent with each other. The line weights are going to be off. It's not going to look balanced. Those are things that would make something look cheap to me.
Okay. So there it is. The through line is that if you want to elevate your logo, your brand,
Mhm.
things need to be visually balanced.
Yes.
And when we say visually balanced, it just kind of needs to be like lined up a certain way. So for those who are listening to this and they are in that hair care space, let's talk about some luxury type salon brands. I always think of Wella, Vidal Sassoon. You don't think cheap, do you? You
No.
think Paul Mitchell,
Hmm.
I'm just thinking of their logos. You're like, okay. Um, but when you see if you think of JC Penney salon, you're like, oh, okay, well I can go affordably get my hair done there, but we're not thinking luxury salon.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I'm going to look up one of those. Let's see, Wella.
Yeah, Wella at the last time I looked, Wella salons, they had the woman with the hair, but it was just
Yeah. Hmm.
the Wella professionals model and then even the images. And we're just only talking about the logo here too. Um
Right. So
their
when we
use of
look at this
color
logo, yeah, they're using black and white with one pop of color with the red.
with the
So
red, yeah.
that's, yeah, so they're not using red and yellow and blue and purple in different parts of it. They've streamlined the colors. They've also got, if you look at the line weights in the hair, it is balanced with the line weight in the word Wella.
Yeah, and
Do you
it
see
almost kind of like
how?
goes like this.
Mhm. So that's important. You want your line weights to kind of match up. I mean, there's contrast as well.
Some
And
of this also has to do with these. Now, of course, these are well established brands, right? They've been around for a
Mhm.
long time. And just saying the name made us think something. So that has a lot to do. So if they're thinking something, you want the logo to match. Now, what happens though, Danielle, is that when you want a makeover, you want to make over your brand, you're like, oh, we need a new logo. And it's like, well, that's only part of the job,
Mhm.
right? That's only part of excuse me. That's only part of it. It's not a lot. So I think that's where it's good to talk to someone who's a professional because a lot of times as business owners, we know what our business is, but our strength
Mhm.
may not be in design. But sometimes what we tend to do, we're bootstrapping. So we're like, well, I'm a designer logo. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do the website.
Mhm.
I'm gonna do all these things by myself. And it's kind of like, well, that no one you can do it, but how effective is that going to be? And could if would it be better if you hired a consultant, someone to help you? So I know I'll teach small business owners how to build their own website, but we're still going to go through the process of, okay, well, what's the feel? What are you trying to convey? And we want because
Mhm.
I'll show you how to make that look that way with the photos, with the type, the typography and stuff like that, because it will come. You don't want your brand to look cheap. And so what's
Mhm.
happening in the beauty industry, I just went to Bronner Brothers, and the conversation that I've been hearing is that beauty um cosmetologists are raising their prices. They need to raise their price because inflation and stuff like that. And I get, we all are raising our price to a certain extent. But then they'll get people that say, well, I don't want to pay that. And I don't know if you've talked to people like, well, I don't want to pay that. And then so what I've realized is that, you know, well, one, pricing is subjective depending on who you're talking to. What could be cheap to one person could be expensive to another person, depending on background, demographics. You understand what I'm saying? It just really
Mhm.
depends on their point of view. However, there is a point where we all know when something is luxury or something you're like, okay, I may not can't afford it, but I can see why you charge that. But when people start questioning your prices, there's a couple of things of like, who are you talking to?
Mhm.
What does your brand look like? Does your price equal the brand that you are putting out there visually?
Yes, yes, I agree because if it's happening every once in a while, it could just be that person. But if
Mm.
it's happening all the time, who are you attracting? What is resonating with the people who are coming to you? There's something in your branding that's off from what you'd like it to be.
Yeah. And it's some hard talk. It's a hard real talk that sometimes we have to
Mhm.
have with ourselves with a coach. I know for a while I was attracting people that just I was like, "Oh, they their price points were not well, it's not a price point I no longer wanted to offer." And I asked
Mhm.
a coach, I was like, a branding coach, I was like, well, how do I something what am I doing? I don't know. And he says, well, um let's look at what your messaging is. What are you saying? And I was like, what do you mean? What am I saying? And so we looked at everything at my language that I was using on social media and my website, and he broke down some words, and I thought, oh, I see now. And but it was I was
Mhm.
able to do that after having that conversation um with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
I was like, "Oh, okay. That's why." It was my words. He's like,
Mhm.
"Oh no, your stuff looks good, but it's probably the words that you're using." And by the way, his name is Ryan Roten. I often talk to him about branding with words. Now he doesn't do the visual
Mhm.
piece of it, but with words. And so it was like, "Oh, okay, my words." And so now if you get the words right and you marry that to someone like you who's doing the visual identity.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And another thing I was thinking, like a lot of times I mean, there's nothing wrong with bootstrapping. Like I totally support bootstrapping. You have to do
Mm-hmm.
it sometimes, when you're starting out. But we often pick things that we like. I like
Yeah.
yellow personally. That is one of the least favorite colors of humans is yellow. So if I picked that for my brand, you know, I'm not going to be attracting the people I want to attract. So that's another thing is if you're doing it yourself, don't just pick elements that you feel like you like, but you really do need to sit down and think about who is my target audience. There's so much information online about color theory and design theory. I would definitely say do a little research before you put your brand out there and just look at what is available to you because and keep things consistent as best you can.
Okay. Okay, that's fair. So just giving an example, we described you described what makes a brand look like a discount brand
Hmm.
and what makes it look like a luxury brand.
Hmm.
Now, if you want to look like a luxury brand or you want to start raising your prices, um, your identity out there, your logo, your photos, your social media, and your words should all equal match up to that higher price because you're
Hmm.
trying to attract someone that is willing to pay the higher price,
Hmm.
correct? Whereas
Yes.
if you have a value brand, which is nothing wrong with that,
Hmm.
then you might could I don't want to say have a little more fun, or it could be
Hmm.
colorful. It could be, but it still should be consistent. Because even with
Yes.
Canva, it's going to be fun, dancing, Walmart, it's just going to have that look.
Hmm.
But what do you think holds people back from doing a rebrand with their identity?
I think there's a couple things. I think when cost is an issue, cost is something that holds people back. I would say that if they actually talked to different graphic designers, they might find that there is a package that's affordable for them. So that doesn't have to be an issue. If you want a professional rebrand, they might be able to tailor a package to your budget. The other thing is that you already have all of these assets that you have to get redone because the designer is only a small part of the eventual price.
Mhm.
So depending on if you're I guess if you're a hair salon, you actually have a physical location. So you may have signage, you have business cards, flyers, all of those assets are going to add up. And so that's another thing that would hold people back.
Oh, okay. Okay. So
Um,
it's probably good to, what does this the scripture say? You should count the cost,
mhm,
and then make the plan. But
mhm.
at some point, how your brand looks will kind of it can affect your bottom line. We don't have the numbers on it, maybe you do, but if your clients are like, you charge way too much money, it's like, okay, why? Why do you think this is the going rate? It's
Mhm.
like something could be off. You're right. If it's just one or two people, you're like, okay, that's not obviously, not everybody's driving a Tesla, and that's okay. Right? Not
Right.
everybody like use it. Some people think Mac computers are expensive, but I'm like, no, they are perfect. I like it. So you fall into a different demographic, and that's okay. We
Mhm.
we all are we all are a part of a demographic, right? But if you are trying
Right.
to run a business and you're like, no, I need to keep it this price and we need to elevate the standards and I want to bring in people, I want to attract people who do not mind, who see this number and say, this is a decent price. I'm okay with paying that. It might be time for a brand identity.
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Because you want to be attracting the people you want to attract. So whatever your niche in the market is, whatever your position is, maybe you are more of a value-oriented brand. Think about that's another thing that can help talking to someone who works with branding is thinking about who your competition is, how you can stand out from them, how you can set yourself apart. Those
Okay.
things can just be so helpful in creating the brand that attracts the people you want to attract.
Okay. Now I'm gonna put myself on the hot seat. Okay. Because I have thought about rebranding my look.
Mhm,
Okay. Seriously. I've thought about it and I've talked to other graphic designers and they said, well, you know, there's a lot of questions you have to go through. We
mhm,
interviewed another a brand identity friend of mine, John Serrana, and he gave his opinion. He was like, I don't know, Ebony, you need to really think about this. And what I did appreciate was he was like, let's think about it before just saying I'm gonna redo the logo because your brand is more than your logo. And I was like, oh, so I would like to get your perspective. I want you to hot seat moment for Ebony. This is the Make Me Over Eb show. Eb gets makeover. But first glance, you look at my brand,
mhm,
you kind of know me a little bit. And I've had that logo, by the way. It was designed professionally by a graphic designer, but it is 15 years old.
mhm.
It's 15 years old. The business has changed. I would like to know your perspective. I'm okay. I can take it.
I mean, I'm looking at it and
Be brutal.
I know I totally agree with John. I
Oh,
I don't remember how to pronounce his last name, which
Serrana,
I
it's
remember
okay.
I listened to that episode. Um, it's simple, it's identifiable, it's got a pop of color. I mean, I honestly think that when I talk with you, the personality that you have comes through. But I mean, there's always things that we could do to make it different if you wanted to, if you were looking for a different feel to it that matches more of what you're going for now.
Okay. Okay.
But I don't look at it and think, oh my goodness, this looks like it was made in 1992 and we have to do some emergency surgery right now.
Oh, well, good. Well, shouts out to the designer who designed it. And I hate that I can't remember their name, but so that, okay, so it's a timeless logo.
Hmm.
Um, with I always wonder though, like, does it give, I don't sell luxury, but I do think the clients that I work with, if you want to go to work with corporate clients, does
Hmm.
your logo matter than if you want to work with small business owners? Or maybe
Mm.
does that even matter? Or is it just putting it in black and white? You know what I mean? Or does that not
Yeah.
matter?
Yeah, I think it does make a difference if you're working with corporations rather than small businesses. I would say it looks friendly and straightforward. So if that's what you're going for with your business, then you've got it.
I'm friendly and straightforward.
Yeah.
Okay. So is this we could do something like Paul Mitchell. Paul Mitchell, they have offshoots of their brand with the
Mhm.
little word under it. So I know we've done Make Me Over Ebb marketing, Make Me Over Ebb web design, like different
Oh,
shoots of it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe
we've
with like a more streamlined version with different colors for corporate.
yeah,
That's a thought.
that's what
That could work.
that's what I've been toying with. I don't think
Yeah.
I've ever talked about it on the podcast, but that's kind of like what I've been thinking about because
Hmm.
the corporate appeal, when you work with corporations and selling workshops and consulting packages is different. It is a different feel than I mean a friendly and straightforward, but then working with hairstylists,
Hmm.
which I could be colorful. You
Hmm.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
because
so
that's a
that's
creative field.
oh yeah, it's very
Yeah.
creative.
Hmm.
And so that's some things that I've been thinking about. But okay, I'm gonna ask one other person. But you guys are saying the same thing. And I think that I like that. And that's the point I want to, kind of put out to the listeners is that sometimes when something is not our lane, it's really good to talk to a professional,
Hmm.
you know, um, and not try to do everything ourselves, although you do bootstrap and you might be able to just do a little bit at a time. One of the things I know web design, a lot of websites, they will have let you write your logo or your company name in just plain text. And then when
Hmm.
you can put your logo in, you can put it in later.
Yeah,
And
that's
I was
true.
like, so I tell people like they said, well, I don't have a logo right now. I was like, well, that's fine. Let's just write it out in a simple font for
Hmm.
now because we do need, you need to get started because a lot of companies are like, well, I need a website in order to apply for this government contract.
Hmm.
And so they need a physical presence, but they may not have time to go get the logo.
Right.
Also, what are your thoughts on the Canva logo creation system?
Um, so what I would say is that I think it's very good. I think it's a powerful program. I also think that it's more templated. So you're not going to find a completely unique logo that is custom made for you. You are going to be similar to other brands that use Canva. Um, but it's going to look polished. I mean, that may be fine for you for where you are in your business.
Okay, okay, okay. So maybe so the startups within, I guess, within the first 5 years, you can have that templatized logo. I don't know if Adobe has a templatized logo part of their suite, but a lot of people using Canva. Canva is very popular
Mhm.
for that. But when you're starting, when you're getting cash in, your revenue is building. If you've been past 5 years, you've kind of got a foundation for your business. It would be time to elevate it, upgrade it, and
Yeah.
grow.
Hmm. And I would say it's also hard to build a cohesive brand through the use of templates. So if you have some design experience and you're able to use the draw functions in Canva to kind of customize things a little more and make your brand consistent, then I would say go for it. I also do think don't completely rule out working with a designer because you're starting out. Because if you talk to a designer, it may not be a complete yes, here, I'm going to give you the full package, but it may be, let's see what assets we can give you to work with your budget so that you can get started and have things be very professional looking and cohesive without breaking the bank for you.
Okay, okay. Well, that's good to know. Now we know well, in the past, I've known logo designers who charge $50, and I've known logo designers who charge $750, and then I've known them that charge thousands of dollars. And I think the point is just like every business has different price points. You want to find the
Mhm.
one that can deliver what you want and that can raise your brand. And I think it's
Mhm.
the same thing. I always go back to the hairstylist analogy. You have someone that could do your hair in the kitchen of their home, get the
Yes.
job done, braid your hair, wash it. But then sometimes you're like, I think I want the salon experience. So I'm gonna go to the salon where I can lay back, get my hair shampooed and steamed, and get served wine.
Mhm.
And the price points are of those two different experiences are they're going to be different, but depending on where you are at your life with your business, you have to just, you're going to choose the one that you want at that time. And I use that as an expression because I've gone to the so-called kitchen titians, and then I've gone to the luxury salon where you have that one-on-one time with the hair steamer. It feels is
Yeah.
incredible. And you're like, you know what? I didn't mind paying $250 for this. This was fun. It was
Yeah.
worth every
And I got a mimosa. Life is good.
and I got a mimosa. And I got a mimosa. And if you're at a point in your business, and this is where I think the makeover comes, and sometimes your clients deserve the mimosa experience. If you're trying to attract champagne clients and you're trying to serve up, I don't want to say a name, but the cheap beer.
Yes.
You trying to serve up the Schlitz malt liquor. It's like, no, you trying to serve up the Cristal.
Mm-hmm.
The good liquor. But yeah.
Yeah.
For those of us who drink, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? You're trying to attract a different client. Doesn't mean one is bad, but you're trying to attract that different clients. So that means that you have to raise the level of your own personal branding.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I think we talked about everything. Bad logo, good logo, identity, and maybe we didn't talk about this. What are mistakes some people are making that you see today in their identity design that you're like,
good question.
I need to call them.
Okay, so one thing that is a big, big mistake that I see, and I actually just had my doctor point one of these out to me. You have got to make sure that your logo doesn't look like something else that you're not intending it to look like. If it might look like a body part or some words or phrases that you do not want it to look like, you've got to ask a few more people, ask around, like, what does this look like to you? So the example that I'm thinking of, and I don't want to call out the brand, but it's a medical company. They offer counseling to people, and their logo is three little people, but the people are kind of made like X's, and it does not look like a medical brand. It looks
Oh, I just
you're going to expect something else when you walk in there based on just the logo. So if they had gotten
yes.
just a couple more people, like get the word on the street first before you start ordering your big sign for your company and your business cards and all of that. Just
Yeah,
get one or
that's
two
true.
more people, get your spouse over there and say like, hey, what does this look like to you? I
What's
would say
another
that's a big one.
what's another mistake you see people? That's funny.
If it's not legible, it needs to be legible at different sizes. So if people can't tell what it is or what it says, it's going to be hard for them to resonate with the company, at least especially your first impression. Like there are some department stores who their logo is just a scribble, but you know that department store, it's a big brand. It's not your first experience with that brand. So that's another one. It needs to be scalable. So if somebody's looking at your logo and this tiny on social media, you need to still be able to tell what it is.
Okay. All right, so good. Three mistakes that people make in their logo. See, and that's a good place to cut for that. Um I feel like I have a couple of other questions, but I may bring you back on the show. But this is really good. This is important. How our brand looks will attract or even detract the clients that we want to work with, and especially if we are visual. Well, people are visual. Everyone's visual, okay? Everyone's visual. Even the lawyer needs to have a decent looking logo. Um, but for those who are also creatives like hairstylists, wellness consultants are not creative. They're not creative, but their logo should look like, I guess based on the mistakes. They should not make the mistakes.
Can I say one thing too? I was just thinking, like, I think social media has made everybody up their game visually too.
Okay.
So you really need to look professional these days.
Okay, because people are silently judging you. So people are judging you. Listen, people are judging you. This whole idea, this is my personal opinion, but I hear some people say, well, I'm just gonna be myself and I don't care what nobody think. Well, that's nice. I would not be who you are, but also recognize that other people who are who they are, they're judging you. And as humans, we tend to judge people and we tend to decide who we spend our dollars with. And so I think sometimes that you have to decide what battle you want to fight. And if you're trying to run a business and you are constantly getting no's and you're constantly, you have to just decide, is this the battle I want to fight? Or find your clients that just like all that quirkiness.
Mhm.
They may like that, but when it comes to spending a lot of money with people, so we do get a little funny with our money because it was hard earned. And basically, that's what we want people to do. We want people to spend money with us, but we also want to build trust.
Mhm.
Okay, Danielle Easler, any final thoughts on logos? Oh, when is it too late? This is the question I just remembered. Sorry, I do this. When is there a point of no return with your brand identity that you tell somebody, listen, let's just call it, I can't resurrect this.
I don't think so. I think
Oh,
it can be
okay.
refreshed or redesigned.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think we need to necessarily say somebody's redlined. We
Oh,
can
okay.
help
So,
them.
okay, y'all, there's hope. There's hope out there. Oh, I love
Yeah.
hope. I love hope. I love hope. Okay, so that's good. So your brand is not it's not necessarily dead. You can resurrect it. You could
Hmm.
refresh it. The logo visual
Yeah.
piece is just one piece, and then you working on your
Hmm.
messaging. Okay, it's all holistic thing, and you could do this in pieces. So don't feel like listening to
Hmm.
this episode like, oh my God, my brand is awful. I need to just da 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 da. One thing at a time. Okay. All right, so you said there's hope. All right, so I
Yeah.
enjoyed talking with you, Danielle Easler of Fedora and Co. She is a graphic designer based in Morrisville, North Carolina. We just had a real girl talk about logos, design, what's bad, what's good. Now, we can find you on your website at fedoraandco.com, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, where you actually give very nice thoughts as well about
Oh, thank
graphic
you.
design. I appreciate that. And thank you for looking at my brand.
Thank you so much, Ebony. It was so much fun. It's always fun with you.
Fun and to the point. I like it. I like it.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah.
all right. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. If you like the show and want to know more, check out our podcast at makemeovereb.com. Please leave us a review on iTunes and join us for the next show.